Did you know that studies from Harvard University made in 2006 show that money spent on travel makes you happier than money spent on material goods? For this reason and many others, leisure travel has become so popular. As the anonymous quote says, the world is a book, and those who do not travel only read one page. To understand the change that travel has brought in our society, we will go way back to the 1950s. Let's take a look at how it was to travel during the Golden Age. During these years, you could expect to pay 40% more from the same ticket you buy today. This means that traveling for the sake of enjoyment was much more less accessible. In addition, it was extremely dangerous. A book published by the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University says that statistically, there were 5 times more plane crashes and flight accidents in the golden age of flying. If this is so, why would anyone want to fly during these years? The results of the price and safety of flying were that a very small percentage of the population actually traveled at this time. This lack of traveling may have been one of the causes to the many problems we had in history. The most important ones were related to racism. There are three very important events that have marked humans, which are World War I, World War II, and the apartheid. Many people today are against the reasons why these conflicts happened. World War I and II were important conflicts that took place in 1914 and 1939 respectively. Their causes were basically nationalism, which refers to becoming attached to one's nation, and, of course, racism against Jewish. By December 1941, Adolf Hitler decided to completely exterminate European Jews. Another important event was the apartheid. This was basically a system of racial segregation that started in South Africa. It was introduced after the general elections of 1948, and inhabitants were classified into four racial groups: black, white, colored, and Indian. This was the clearest example of racism. The question is, could this have been different if traveling was more popular? Today, nationalism and racism seem to have diminished a lot. Can travel be one of the reasons why these problems become smaller each time? Travel can bring many positive things to human beings, especially in their way of thinking. Now we will take a look at how traveling has changed people and why this has been important for human development. Flying today is extremely different of what it was in the Golden Age. In the 21st century, leisure travel has become extremely popular and much more affordable than it was before, thanks to low-cost airlines. In addition, safety is relatively better than it was in the 1950s. So, how has travel helped humans to be more tolerant? When traveling, people are basically forced to tolerate other cultures. How is it possible to be a tourist at a country and not accept their population? 1 year ago, I left Bogota and lived in France for 6 months. At the beginning, the smell of the subway was driving me crazy. With time, I realized that French were lending me their country to live there. I had to accept their tradition of bathing occasionally because they were accepting me. A famous quote says, "A smile is a smile in every language." When people travel, they realize that communication is extremely important. How am I going to order at a restaurant? How am I going to ask for directions? Learning new languages and being able to communicate with people that have different native language creates a certain bond with them. Traveling also helps you see things from a different perspective. Have you heard of the metaphor of the iceberg? You can see it in the picture. If you look at it from the top, you will say that the iceberg is relatively small. If you look at it from the bottom, you'll see that it is enormous. By traveling, you will be able to see the iceberg from underwater. You'll learn things and people are not always the way they seem from the outside. When you fight stress, there is no need to discharge it on others. Did you know that benefits of travel are almost immediate? After only a day or two, 89% of people experience significant drop in stress. As we all know, stress can cause a negative attitude and behavior in humans, which can cause internal and external conflict, such as depression and disagreements respectively. I have also learned that new experiences increase our resourcefulness. I've noticed that people who travel a lot in life were easily creating change and they have a natural ability of overcoming problems that others would have trouble with. Why? Because they have learned to use the tools in life to solve their problems. After analyzing some benefits of traveling, do you believe that the apartheid and the world wars would have happened? The merging of cultures, the new language, seeing things from a new perspective, and the fighting of stress have definitely made people more tolerant and understanding with others. Respecting others has become a value in most societies. So, as we have seen through this presentation, we live in a diverse nation made up of different cultures, races, and backgrounds. This variety can make our lives a lot more interesting, but only if we get along with each other. The next step is to find ways of treating people with respect to make the world a nicer place to live in. Here are some rules of how to treat others with respect that can be learned from traveling. The first rule that can be learned from traveling and the characteristics that traveling gives you is to never insult people or make fun of them. Do you believe that Jews wearing kippas are funny? Well, time to get over it. Just because your culture, religion, or background acts differently or does things differently, there is no need in making fun of others. Rule number 2, never stereotype people. Stereotyping leads to mistakes. Categorizing groups of people is unfair since not all people or things with particular characteristics are the same. Nevertheless, people still do this. Have you heard that every Colombian is a drug dealer? How do we feel about this? By traveling, stereotypes can be abolished. Rule number 3, try to learn something from other people. Instead of judging or being surprised by others' cultures, try to learn something from them. What about Jews and their ability to make money? What about Chinese and their abilities to produce faster than anybody else? What about Thai food and their delicious spicy cuisine? Make the best of every situation. Nevertheless, of course, it is obvious that many people in the 21st century still cannot afford traveling for pleasure. Traveling is still a luxury that we thank every single day. The message that I want to transmit is that even those who are not able to travel today have to be more open-minded. In conclusion, traveling can have many benefits on human beings. Nevertheless, I repeat, it is not the only way of acquiring these characteristics. Throughout life, you'll find many situations similar to being in other countries, such as international schools, where you also have to get used to other cultures.